Special edition of the Damian G Show on YouTube. Find me on Twitter at DamianG347 and also on Instagram by the same name. You can find the SoundCloud stream for all your past episodes as well as this YouTube channel. So my guest co-host again for this episode, one Melissa Foss, who is sitting right next to me, and I decided to do a special show because, well, let's be honest here. We literally saw an hour of boring Monday Night Raw up until the last segment where Becky Lynch kind of just destroyed the whole Raw women's roster by herself. And I felt the need for us to jump on here and talk about that. Also, there will be an appearance about Michael Jackson later on in the show, but I will get to that later. First off, Mel, thoughts on what we just saw in regards to Becky Lynch and even your thoughts on her character development.
Well, I just put it on Twitter that I believe that was the best ending to Raw in a long, long time. I don't know. People can fight me on it. It doesn't matter. It's my opinion.
Ain't nobody fighting you on anything.
No, but I think it, even outside of kind of the obvious Becky looking totally dominant in that situation, the fact that they let the women finish out Raw is amazing to me. The way that they did it was amazing. Becky getting bloodied, whether that was on purpose or I'm assuming was inadvertent, just kind of added to the entire story. And I now want to watch that match on Sunday.
Are you talking about Survivor Series in general?
Yes.
Okay, so before we were watching Raw, we kind of had this apathy toward Survivor Series, where it used to be a big four pay-per-view, and by big four, I mean SummerSlam, WrestleMania, Survivor Series, and Royal Rumble. And for me personally, Survivor Series was always my favorite one because of the 4-on-4 or 5-on-5 concept. But I feel in the last couple of years, it's been kind of lackluster. And I felt the build up to Survivor Series because we had all this backlog with Evolution and with the pay-per-view that shall not be named. And oh yeah, by the way, we have NXT TakeOver. Oh yeah, and Survivor Series as sort of the redhead stepchild of WWE programming at the moment. So watching that last segment, while dreadful, before SmackDown came out and pretty much did what happens every year, but the fact, to your point, that it was women closing it out. Women closed out the segment. Yes. Women were in the main event of Monday Night Raw. Yes. Again. And I almost forgot because we're on a time difference from New York. So I'm thinking, 9:45, they're showing the women and they're going more than 15 minutes. Interesting. Until I realized we're in Texas. So it's almost 11 Eastern by the time that was rolling around. So it hit me at that point that it was the main event. So I can honestly say I was hyped to watch Becky versus Ronda because I think they're both really good. But the evolution, pun unintended, of Becky Lynch's character from the last 2 years of SmackDown Forgotten Child to the man or the woman, depending on which way of the spectrum you want to land on, has been nothing short of amazing. And I've said this before, and you know this, Mel, that Becky was always my favorite horsewoman. She had both the charisma, the in-ring acumen, the relatability, the punk, the steampunk gimmick itself before was fine, but now that she's kind of just this I don't give a F badass, I don't even want to call her a female Stone Cold because I feel that that's a bit of a detriment to Becky's character evolution. She's just tough. And the fact that she's got bloody just now on Monday Night Raw, and she got the biggest pop of the night because that crowd was dead during Sasha Bailey. And I even asked you, why was this dead? So I think personally, just watching Becky be bloodied, and I even asked you, like, was that her Stone Cold moment? Where the bloody face and stuff like that, and talking trash to Ronda Rousey. just I want you to give the audience a little bit of a, I guess, your viewpoint, because you're not really invested in WWE as often as you used to be, myself included. But it's interesting to get your feedback on the evolution of Becky Lynch and where she stands right now in the annals of WWE.
I think what's interesting is you talk about the last couple years, and there wasn't so much of a highlight on her or spotlight on her. I mean, um, but what's interesting is that a lot of people, if you followed kind of her social media, she was so personable with the fans. So the fans have been behind her for a while, even though the quote unquote machine maybe wasn't at that time or wasn't for a period of time. Her relationship with the fans has been growing stronger and stronger for the last couple years. I think her being a heel is kind of hilarious. It works right now and I really love it. Like I said, I think at the end I would really love it on Sunday if she shows up with the face mask like what Trish Stratus wore when she broke her nose, just to kind of add the heel, more of a heel vibe to it. Because, inevitably it would be used against Ronda on Sunday in some way. But um, I think little things like that and little nuances like that would just kind of keep feeding into this heel role of hers. And I'm honestly loving it. Like, it's so entertaining. And that's what I feel I haven't had much of in WWE lately. It's not entertainment to me, it is lackluster. The writing is kind of humorous to me. Um, but that last segment was seemingly so unscripted, and Becky getting bloodied kind of added more to that, kind of added this mystery to what's going to happen on Sunday. So I think they're building it up really well. That, in my mind, has potential to be match of the night or possibly main event material.
Well, that was one of the things I even told you. I said, main event. I feel like it's a box office heavyweight fight and it should be marketed as such. But I don't know how WWE was going to kind of play that, because I know their big thing with Raw is the Braun Strowman thing and McIntyre and Ziggler, the Dogs of War, whatever the heck they were called now, Seth and Dean. But I don't care at the moment about Seth and Dean. I even asked you about Shinsuke and what you call it, Shinsuke and what's his face and Seth, and I said 15 minutes. I'm interested in seeing that, and you even said on paper that seemed like a great match. But do we care? Because you were apathetic toward that too.
I genuinely don't care, and I hate that so much, because Seth and Shinsuke, I think, are athletically and as far as wrestling goes, two of the absolute best. On paper, that match could steal the show at any pay-per-view. But the bummer about this is that it's pretty inevitable that Dean will somehow get in the middle of this. And that's a kind of thing that bums me out when I already know what's probably going to happen. I won't say for sure, it's wrestling, anything could happen, but I want to be excited about that match, but there's been no build up to that match. The whole build has been about Seth and Dean. So I have no emotional vested interest in what will happen between Shinsuke and Seth right now.
Here's the thing. And anyone listening here now knows that I have been a big Shinsuke Nakamura supporter, to the point where I will watch Zayn versus him to cheer myself up. So shout out to Rant with Ant for bringing that up about what matches would you watch to kind of pull yourself out of a funk. That's a match I would watch probably once or twice a year just to remind me that, dude, wrestling used to be fun. And now, because of WWE's booking of Shinsuke Nakamura, I don't care. So thank you for ruining that part, writing team. Appreciate you. But SmackDown saved themselves by kind of just letting Becky Lynch take over, because we've talked about Kevin Dunn and Dio. I know you're going to be listening too. To quote Dio, Kevin Bucktooth Bastard Dunn has the nerve to criticize Becky's voice, and yet, he looks like a toenail. That's a Damian quote right there. But don't look at me like that. He's the one that said that her accent was too hard to understand on television. So Kevin Dunn bought this on himself. But the but I think you brought up the Survivor Series card. Let me take a look at that really quick. I know that we have AJ versus Brock again.
Again, I want to be excited about this match, and I not. Like, it's not a secret that I'm not a Brock Lesnar fan. I wasn't a Brock Lesnar fan. Sorry, kids. I wasn't a Brock Lesnar fan when he first started in WWE. I wasn't a Brock Lesnar fan when he returned. And shocker, I'm still not a Brock Lesnar fan. Just doesn't do anything for me personally from a fan perspective. AJ Styles, obviously one of the best wrestlers ever. He will easily top 5 wrestlers ever. I mean, for eternity. In my mind, in my opinion, that's clearly my opinion. But again, I want this to be a great match. I would really love to be shocked and it be a great match. I fear it will just be another squash for Brock, and that's what bums me out. Is I want to see these matches and feel excited about it, and that excitement isn't there for a couple of these matches that have so much potential to be just what's barn burners is what they call them, just phenomenal matches, and I'm not that excited about them.
Well, as you were talking, I kept thinking about something that Eugene had said on Twitter. Wade Ilson, also known as Eugene, he said something along the lines of, the Raw women's team is basura, which is garbage in Spanish for those that don't know. And yeah, it's kind of garbagey, because when you have Natalya as the only face on the team and the rest are heels, I think I know that SmackDown's women are winning. I mean, yeah, it kind of looks that way. So even though that kind of takes the potential shine out of it, because think about it, the only Raw woman who could potentially be the sole survivor is Nia, if you're playing fantasy booker. Whereas the SmackDown women's team, I don't even know if they've announced the SmackDown women's team yet.
They've announced 4 of them.
Okay. And I know Asuka's one of them.
Yeah.
Wouldn't be surprised.
It's Asuka, Daria, Naomi. I keep calling her Trinity.
It's fine.
I know. Oh shoot, I don't remember the 4th one, and then the 5th one hasn't been announced.
Probably Carmella or R-Truth is going to think he's in the match or something, and then do a dance break. But going back to your earlier point about not really caring about Survivor Series as a whole, on paper, AOP versus the Bar looks like it would be like a brawl, a barroom brawl kind of thing. Don't care. Mustafa Ali versus Buddy Murphy. If I was more invested in 205 Live like I used to be, I'd say I'd watch that. Now, I know JJ Williams has tried constantly to get me to be into Buddy Murphy. And aside from his theme song, that's all I got. I know they're deeming him the juggernaut of the cruiserweight division. First off, don't insult my favorite Marvel Comics character next to Venom. That's rude. Secondarily, R.I.P. Stan Lee, by the way. But why are you looking at me like that for?
Rabbit trail. That's all.
It's not a rabbit trail. The Juggernaut is a Marvel Comics character and is my second favorite next to Venom. So if they're calling Buddy Murphy the Juggernaut, I got a bone to pick with you on that one. And they tried to use that on Roman Reigns a couple years ago. If you go back and listen to old Shield Michael Cole play-by-play, he would call Roman the Juggernaut of the Shield. And again, disrespecting Kane Marco, don't like it. It's got to stop. Anyway, that's my little nerd soapbox for right now. But going back to Survivor Series, I remember as a kid where I used to love, I still remember Survivor Series 88. It had like 20 tag teams, well, 10 tag teams on each side. And it was like the Rockers, the Young Stallions, the Conquistadors, Demolition, the what was it, the Powers of Pain, the Bolsheviks, all these random hodgepodge of 80s tag teams. And if you eliminate one, you eliminate both. That's usually how the tag team elimination match goes. But that's something for me that always stood out, the elimination matches. The Ultimate Warrior being like the sole survivor at a few, a few Survivor Series matches. That wild card match in '95 with where you had the heels and the faces all mixed up on teams. Ahmed Johnson, there's a name, was debuting at I think it was November '95, where he was on the winning team with British Bulldog and Shawn Michaels, and the only other face on the other team was Razor Ramon at the time. So again, a memory of Survivor Series. And dare I forget, Survivor Series 96, the debut of one Dwayne The Rock Johnson, which your boy was at in Madison Square Garden live with my brother Marco, actually, of all people that went with me. So I know that would get a kind of a reaction out of you. But I was there in that building for that. And here's a little old school thing, and I'll let you chime in here as I get off my old man tangent. Barry Windham was the stalker back in 1996. You don't know who Barry Windham is? Oh, you didn't watch WCW a lot. Okay. If you watch WCW, he was maybe the Cesaro of WCW back in the day, like really good wrestler, could be in a tag team or in a faction, but he wasn't talented enough to be the guy for whatever reason. But yeah, Barry Windham was dubbed the Stalker, and he came out in like army fatigues. I know I'm saying the word like a lot. Sorry, guys. Just overall, just awkward. But that's a Survivor Series memory of mine. And keeping in that vein, let me get your opinion, because I'm sure you're tired of me talking about 96 and Barry Windham. Survivor Series memories for yourself.
I don't know. Nothing really stands out specifically, to be quite honest. To me, Survivor Series wasn't really a big one in my book.
Why is that?
For me, well, I didn't have cable as a kid. So like if I wanted to watch any pay-per-views, it was like 3 months later when it was at Family Video or something. Like that was about it. But for me, it was always kind of Royal Rumble and WrestleMania were the biggest shows for me.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you for the women at Survivor Series based off coming off of Evolution versus the whole card? So 2 separate numbers. The women's involvement, scale of 1 to 10, or 3 out of 10. Ha ha ha. Inside joke. And the actual card itself, because I'm getting a 2 out of 10 on the whole card itself, but the women's parts of the card, I'm giving it like at least a 6 out of 10. Becky's got an 8 out of 10 for me. So
yeah, I think the Ronda Becky match is about an 8 out of 10 for me. I think as far as the women's Survivor Series match, I want to say about a 6 or 7, just because there's not much. I don't know. I guess it looks like the SmackDown team is going to take it. I'm kind of hoping for some surprises. I think it would be cool to maybe have an NXT team show up at the last minute, and that would be really cool to pull up some NXT ladies. To have a Candice LeRae, Bianca Belair, show up and have their own team. That would be kind of cool. I don't know. I like swerves like that, I guess. But so as far as that match goes, probably about a 6 or so. The rest of the card, that sounds so terrible. I'm probably at a 3 or 4 out of 10. I wish I was more excited. I wish there was more potential to be surprised. To be quite frank, I'm looking more forward to Gargano and Aleister Black Saturday night than I am any of the men's matches on Sunday night.
that's another thing. I forgot about NXT War Games, and we were both at the War Games last year. Uh, really good pay per view, really bad seats in spite of the fact that we were sitting in the first level. But that's because the whole two rings thing and they alternated between rings and it was just really cumbersome to watch. But I forgot about NXT. And from what I read, there's only 4 matches advertised on the card. I'm really Gargano versus Black is probably the thing I'm looking forward to the most. Here's the thing. Last year's War Game match was okay. I come from, because I'm old enough to know this, the old school War Games of WCW. And that was used to do a blow off to a feud. I didn't feel last year was a blow off to any feud. I just felt like it was, let's culminate War Games with these 3 teams that are fighting in the War Game. I feel like this one is a little better because you have 8 people involved and this feels like the culmination of a feud on all facets. You know, you got the War Raiders dealing with Undisputed Era, you got Ricochet dealing with Adam Cole, you got Pete Dunne dealing with everybody because Pete Dunne doesn't like anyone. I feel like that is a really good way to kind of sum up War Games for the pay per view itself. I'm not really looking forward to Shayna versus Kyrie again. I'm not high on Kyrie Sane. I haven't been for a while. Pardon the pun, but that ship has sailed for me. I really was hoping Riddle versus Ono would make the show. But from what I read today, apparently it's going to be on the pre-show or even at a pre-tape for an episode of NXT.
But for those who get to see that live, I kind of envy you because those two are a couple of my absolute favorites.
Well, I've seen them beat the crap out of each other at Evolve before, so wouldn't be the first time I see them do it again. But I'm looking forward to that because honestly, if you would have asked me 2 years ago if Matt Riddle would be in a WWE style ring right now, I would have said, "Are you out of your damn mind?" 4 matches, yeah, and that's pretty much where we're at right now. So we got the War Games match, we got Ciampa versus Dream, Baszler versus Sane, and Black versus Gargano. Is it fair to say this might be a 2-match card?
Possibly. I don't. I've the great thing about NXT is that I feel like they do surprises really well, and they do the excitement really well. And I mean, again, people can disagree, and that's fine. But I feel like whenever there's an NXT show paired with a WWE pay per view, the NXT show steals it every single time. And every time you watch the next day, hoping that you'll be wrong and the main card is going to be just like off the charts. And then most of the time for me, it doesn't. Like, nope, NXT was still like the best, in my opinion.
Well, I feel like that's been a common occurrence. And I think I've been a big proponent of NXT being not even developmental anymore. I feel the Performance Center is developmental, but when you make it to actual NXT television, you're part of the brand at that point. You know, you run the house show circuit, you're in developmental. When you make TV, you're part of the brand. When I think it was Dio that and I were talking about Aaliyah the other day. Feels like she's been in NXT for 15 years, you know, but at least she's getting television time. We haven't seen that we haven't seen Casey Canizaro since the Mae Young Classic on television. That Jesse, we haven't seen on television. Who else? Like exactly. I'm blanking on like Reina Gonzalez or Kavita Devi. I haven't seen any of those girls on NXT. So I feel like the Performance Center itself and the house show circuit is the developmental portion. And once you graduate from there and you make it on television, NXT television, then you're an NXT superstar, which I feel now is sort of become WWE's indie indoctrination promotion. It's like, hey, indie guys and gals, come to NXT. You'll bypass the training and just be straight on television. And then we're going to put you on the main roster in about 6 months. So that's how I feel NXT's kind of been run. It's been run as if it's a super independent wrestling promotion, with the Performance Center just being the place they train.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see what you're saying. There's obviously the performance center, so many athletes that they've brought in, both wrestlers and, bringing up Casey, just outside the wrestling world kind of athletes. Um, and maybe just their training takes a little more time. Maybe just those coming from the indies that maybe didn't have much time on bigger stages, I guess. They're having kind of stay a little bit longer. I don't know. I'm totally assuming I'm not a trainer there. But you see people like Matt Riddle and that just seem to kind of be coming in and then just speeding right towards the top of the card. But then there's people like Johnny Gargano and Tommaso Ciampa who have been there for a little while, but they are, in my mind, still they're at the top of the NXT list in my mind. So I think it just depends on the talent. Obviously, there's so many factors. I'm sure, the main roster being just as long of a list as however many people are at the performance center. So kind of navigating around where is a good spot for them? Is there a good spot for them right now? Maybe not the case. So it's just kind of a lot of patience from a fan perspective. But in the meantime, the creative and the excitement and the enjoyment that I get out of NXT, I just don't see much on the main roster right now. So I'm just going to enjoy NXT right now as much as I can with the talent that they have.
And I want anyone listening to this to chime in also. I know in the chat, there's a few people in the chat. So let me know how excited you are on a scale of 1 to 10 for Survivor Series or for NXT. I gave Survivor Series as a whole a 3 out of 10 or a 2 out of 10. The women's portion, the women's match, maybe 6 out of 10. And Becky versus Ronda, I'll give that my 9 out of 10 in terms of expectation and anticipation. NXT, 7 out of 10 anticipatory level. Granted, we'll probably be at an indie show on Saturday, so we'll catch it after the fact.
So it'll be a great show. It's an all-women show that we'll be at, so it'll be great.
So I'm still staying on brand, folks. And for those who are just tuning in, this is the Damian G Show with Damian G347, along with special guest host Melissa Foss. Find her on Twitter at Melissa Foss7. And honestly, I think it's Reality of Wrestling that we're going to on Saturday.
It is Booker T's promotion, I guess, that he runs down there. They're doing an all-women show. I believe it's Taya versus Jordan Grace is the main event. So it's going to be fantastic, no doubt.
So for those who don't know, who don't watch Impact, Jordan Grace recently debuted. And I know my boy Eugene loves Jordan Grace, and I'm a big fan. I've been telling people for 2 years now about her, that she has it. And she really does in spades. And if you haven't seen Taya Valkyrie work before, you are definitely in for a treat. She's been on Lucha Underground. She's on Impact. So we're going to, was it Ladies Night Out?
Yeah.
Yes. Ladies Night Out 4, I believe, for Reality of Wrestling. And that is Booker T's promotion. And you can catch both Melissa and myself there. If you're in the Houston area, feel free to check it out because it's actually going to be good wrestling. So I am staying on brand in being the women's wrestling connoisseur that I am. But exactly. See, Eugene's in the chat right now. And he goes, you and all these women's shows. Taya versus Jordan. He just screamed. So shout out to Eugene in the chat. And he's rating TakeOver as a 10 out of 10. And Survivor Series is a 4.5 out of 10.
So interesting. That is so fascinating to me. I don't know. It's kind of universal that the hopes seem to be so much higher for the quote developmental than the main roster.
Why do you think? Okay, I know in my opinion why that is, because I've said it's a super indie almost. Where do you lie on that whole? What makes NXT better in your estimation than the main roster?
I don't know. I don't know much about the writing or creative side of it. There seems to be maybe a bit more freedom. There seems to be a bit more trust of the talent maybe in NXT than there is on the main roster. And that sounds really harsh, but they just kind of, these people are brought in because they're some of the top indie performers. And it feels like when they come into NXT, there's this trust of like, you've done this for 10 years already, and your reputation speaks for itself. So this is what we want to happen. We want to see what you can do with that. And then they just deliver every time.
Well, that's something I definitely agree with there. It never disappoints. Just again, Eugene in the chat saying Takeover never disappoints him. And I can honestly say I have not been disappointed with a Takeover in the last year, 2 years, maybe. Yeah, I think about 2 years. But that's just me. I'm looking forward to Takeover. I wasn't as at first, but now talking to you and talking to Eugene in the chat, because I don't know if you know, Eugene is a really staunch independent wrestling fan.
I appreciate that.
Yes, he really is. And I respect his opinion. And Jazz apparently will be appearing at Lee's Night Out 4 this Saturday, November 17th in Houston, Texas. Ariel Monroe versus wow, what? Kiara Hogan? I've seen them tussle in New York. They're pretty good. My fake cousin, Alex Gracia, will be on the card. Kylie Ray, who I've always been a fan of, so be prepared to hear me sing the Pokemon theme song. Thunder Rosa versus Eva Lise. This is a pretty damn good card. Sue Young's on it too. This is a really good card. So if y'all are in the Houston area, if you all are in the Houston area this Saturday, please check out Reality, was it?
Reality of Wrestling.
Thank you. Reality of Wrestling. I'm going to say Warriors of Wrestling, but that's a different promotion. Reality of Wrestling in Houston, Texas, November 17th. I want to switch gears real quick, a little bit off of wrestling before we get out of here. But one more thing about Becky Lynch. To quote Eugene, she single-handedly has saved Survivor Series and made it watchable. I agree with that. That is the only reason now I feel like I'm tuning into Survivor Series is to see Becky versus Ronda.
I wonder though if, and we can get opinions, and some feedback on this, if she wasn't bloodied at the end, would it have been as exciting as it is?
It goes back to what I was saying when it was happening. I said, is this her Stone Cold Crimson Mask moment where she's just standing in her adulation and the crowd is popping for her louder than anyone else they've popped for the whole night? And maybe not, but I think the verbal jabbing between Ronda and Becky on social media has been a treat to watch. I don't know where the line is. I think they're doing a really good job of kind of blurring the line between personal and fiction. But I honestly feel that this is Becky Lynch. She will talk trash because she knows she's that good, and she will not be held down any longer.
I think we were in Philadelphia at the Royal Rumble when Ronda debuted, and I remember kind of being bummed out because I remember thinking like, well, now no one can beat her. Now, like, everyone knows that she is first class athlete. Like, how is this going to work? To her credit, she's done amazing since she's been there. She has really exceeded far my expectations. I think Becky is kind of the first opponent of hers where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a real legit fight. This is going to be real. It's still real to me. And I think that this match, I think with Becky is the first time that I'm like, this is kind of a real
Shoot fight.
Not a shoot fight, but this has potential to be a real challenge for Ronda and Becky. And that's what I like to see.
I'm laughing because I'm seeing your face change from when we started the broadcast talking about that to now. Now you look excited. You look into it. And I'm laughing because I'm reading the chat and and anyone listening out there, I am a Latin man. All right, let's start. I am Latino. Let's put that out there. The reason I'm saying this is because of my boy Eugene in the chat again in regards to Becky and the blood. He says it felt like adding the sazon or adobo to make the dish an overall joy. So I don't know if you know sazon or adobo. We've talked about adobo before.
Briefly.
Okay. So basically it's Latin seasoning.
Okay.
It's Goya Latin seasoning. So basically, Becky having the bloody nose is like the extra like seasoning. You, you y'all can't see on the camera, but I did a little like a Latino heat dance, Eddie Guerrero shimmy to kind of frame that from Melissa. That's what that means.
Things are unraveling very quickly.
There's like a Latino heat dance going on right now, and I think for the Becky thing, we're gonna leave that here and just say, for me personally, and I think you're in agreement with this, that's going to be the only reason to really tune in for Survivor Series.
For me personally, yes.
And for me, it's just that, and who winds up being the sole survivor of the women's, I guess, Survivor Series match, because, and maybe if Seth versus Shinsuke actually is awesome, which I doubt.
Like, it would be really cool if there's something at the beginning where Dean was like barred, but then we all know that he would still do some crazy run in. Like, I don't know. There hasn't really been much of a story build up for Shinsuke and Seth, and the focus has been on Dean, which we all get and we understand the build that's going to happen, and that's going to be a great match too. But Shinsuke versus Seth on paper looks amazing. Mm-hmm. I wish I was more excited about it in this very moment.
Well, I think part of the drawback to Survivor Series is that it's that whole champion versus champion bragging rights thing. Last I remember, WWE had a bragging rights pay-per-view that didn't do too well usually. So I feel like Survivor Series has become the new bragging rights. And I think that's a reason why probably you're not really excited about it. And you know what? Neither am I, aside from Becky versus Ronda again. But I want to switch gears. And for those, again, tuning in late, this is the Damian G Show with Damian G and special guest host Melissa Foss. This Saturday was my birthday. And for those that don't know, so happy birthday to me belatedly. And we went, why are you always looking at me like I got 10 heads?
Sorry. Just so excited. Sorry.
For those who aren't seeing the video, Melissa looks at me sometimes when I'm talking as if I have 20 heads. And for her, it's like, what's going on right now? That's her perpetual look at me half the time. Whenever I'm in my zone. But it was my birthday, and we went to a video game arcade, all you can play video game arcade on Saturday called Free Play here in Richardson, Texas. Now, they had tons of games, old school, Street Fighter, Pac-Man, Dig Dug. We played Tapper for the first time, which I found really fun because it actually had a beer tap as a controller. So I thought that was a really nice add-on. I thought that was cool. But the highlight of the night for us was playing one Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. Now, for those that don't know, Michael Jackson, yes, the king of pop, may he rest in peace, had a video game for the Sega Mega Drive known as the Genesis here in the States. Now, it was a fighting game where a side-scrolling beat-em-up akin to Double Dragon or Final Fight, which you also played with me on Saturday. And Michael Jackson is dressed in his Moonwalker costume or outfit from the video. And there was some random shenanigans because, let me see if I got this right, and correct me if I'm missing anything. Not only was he dressed in his nightclub outfit, like he was going to go on the town with his fedora hat and his tie and all that stuff, he looked like a Miami pimp. I think that's the best way for me to describe it. He looked like Almas when he first debuted in NXT, like that kind of outfit with the hat and the suspenders and everything. But Mike's fighting moves, and I use that term rather loosely, was his dance moves. And it was like hand motions, shamons, and if you push the super button, it was the dance button. And they would bust out Bad, the theme song from Bad. Oh, it was a Smooth Criminal. Smooth Criminal. And he would destroy everything on the screen. But he would go, ow, every single time you would do a move. Now, the thing that's really throwing me off here is the whole point of the game was to rescue children that were kidnapped by an evil scientist. And seeing the kids in Genesis graphics say, "Help me, Michael," and they were tied and bound, and it was a little off-putting just for 5 seconds. But the gameplay itself was kind of random, and it was basically him doing palm strikes as his attack. So I know I still can't get over the fact that I played this game. But what about you? Because I know you and I were kind of just like, what are we doing? What's happening right now? And we kind of just didn't know what to expect from that.
Well, I mean, like you said, one random thing about it that I remember is that it was actually a 3-player arcade instead of a 2-player arcade. And like each Michael Jackson was dressed in a different color. Like one was in red, one was in white, one was in blue. And I love the fact that like all the bad guys had weapons, but not Michael Jackson. His weapon was his dance move. Like that made it really fantastic. Yeah, it was kind of like, are we saving children? But then like we would like, I don't know, untie the rope or whatever, and then like they would just run away. So it was so random, but yep. And then everyone had a dance button, and whenever someone pushed it, then like the whole game paused, and all the Michael Jacksons would just start dancing. So an interesting game for sure.
Oh, and you forgot about the monkey that joins in, and he turns to a robot when the monkey merges with Michael Jackson, and he turns into a mecha style Michael Jackson with eye beams. And that game was really strange, I guess we're trying to say here. So if you get a chance to get an emulator or go to an arcade and play Michael Jackson's Moonwalker, it probably was one of the most random ass experiences in video game play. And here's the weird part. It was fun to play. We both realized at the end of the game, we didn't know what we saw. We didn't know what we played, but we had a good time regardless. And then there were a couple of other games there. For the first time, Melissa played Final Fight. For those that don't know, Mike Hagar tied into wrestling. The mayor of Metro City goes to rescue his kidnapped daughter, but he's also a former wrestler, so that's the wrestling theme tied into that. For you Street Fighter fans, there's Cody and Guy. Cody is based off of a character from Streets of Fire, I believe, named Cody as well. And Guy is a ninja. Yeah, that just went over your head. That's a side note. There's a lot of movies that Melissa has not seen that I want to introduce her to, but at the same token, there's a lot of movies that I haven't seen that she's just thinking, you need to sit down and watch this stuff. Oh, and by the way, the Christmas tree in the apartment's already up, and we're in November, 12th?
Mm-hmm. I have no shame.
I know you know, but I just want to let the audience know that the Christmas tree's already up. We're jumping past Thanksgiving, and
we are not jumping past Thanksgiving. We're still going to celebrate it, but it's okay that the Christmas tree is up.
And there are presents already under the tree.
Yes. Because I'm going to have to ship some, right. So I get that done early.
What did I get?
What?
What did I get?
Nothing.
Because I asked for nothing. Every time someone asks me what do I want for Christmas, the answer is nothing. Because we saw The Grinch the other day, and it just reminded me to always be grumpy during Christmas, because while everyone wants to pretend to be happy, it's better to be grumpy. And I'm getting the evil stares being thrown at me right now. What is that? Are you cut? Is that a slice my face?
No,
but,
because you cried.
Wow, really? Audience didn't need to know all that. Thank you for kind of giving away my secrets. But the same motion between the tear and like cutting your, I'll cut you. Like I have heard you say you'll cut somebody. I have heard you say that. Of course, it was in jest, but you was like, I'll cut you. Anyway, you've been hanging out with too many Puerto Ricans, but that's not true. So before we get out of here, I want to just thank everybody for kind of putting up with the hiatus that I was on for a long time, and for allowing me to kind of ease my way back into broadcasting, because it was a long road to get back here. And it's kind of, not to quote Shawn Michaels here, but I kind of lost my smile doing it for a while. But it's good to be back. It's good to be talking to you all. Shout out to everybody on Twitter who follows me and I follow back. everyone who's been really supportive of me getting back in the swing of things. So thanks a lot, guys and gals. I really appreciate it. As always, find me on Twitter, DamianG347. Tweet the show. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you want us to talk about next time. You can find Melissa at MelissaFoss7 on Twitter. She's pretty much a breath of fresh air in terms of being the wrestling fan's favorite wrestling fan, because she can probably see no wrong in wrestling in terms of independent promotions, unless you're just a jerk.
Don't be a jerk. Oh, don't be a jerk. Just enjoy wrestling. Wrestling is meant to be enjoyed. Don't be all grumpy about it.
But you sound like you feel some type of way about that.
No, some people just like go into a wrestling show with the plan to be grumpy. And if you do that, then it's just going to be grumpy.
Basically, don't be grumpy and don't be a jerk. And yeah, don't be a dick. If you, me and Chip would always say, don't be a dick. So shout out to Chip Kayfabe, my former co-host at Salty Chips. He's a really good dude. He's doing some really good things for the YMCA that he works at in Massachusetts and Boston. So if you follow him on Twitter at Chip Kayfabe, he does a lot of good things for the Boys and Girls Club and the YMCA. I'm sorry, YMCA. And I just want to thank him for being who he is exactly. He's been a great friend, a good co-host, and an even better human being. And she's not. Who said you're taking his spot? Just Chip is a good dude, and he deserves all the support and love and all the good stuff that happens to him. And Eugene, thank you again for being one of the few people to recognize me in public by my voice alone. That one year at Comic-Con, which I found really awesome. It's good to be back for people like you who I get to talk to daily and just shoot the shit. You're one of the most positive people on Twitter also. Wade Ilson is a very good human being. And honestly, he's one of the people I do this for. So again, thank you for listening. This is Damian G, a.k.a. Damian Gracia, Melissa Foss. Pretty much now we're kind of pumped up for Becky versus Ronda. Other than that, a little lukewarm. But let us know what you think. Tweet me. Just let us both know. And we'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.